Number one, do you see bait? At some point in this fall transition, those bass in your body of water are gonna really get onto bait, whether those are shad or minnows, whatever it might be. But do you see bait? If you have to, look around for birds. Do you see herons and egrets and gulls? Are there eagles? If you see that type of bird life or those presence of birds, you know that there is food in the area. Then once you have that narrowed down, do you see shad flicking around on the surface? Are you seeing minnows, going down the shoreline? Look for that bait. If you're coming into a location that you see no life whatsoever in the fall, just keep on moving, keep walking down the shoreline, and be sure as you're looking around, look in places you wouldn't normally find this bait. Those bass are going to be so focused on that stuff that you could find schools of largemouth and smallmouth in areas you hadn't seen them all year. They could be just way out there in the middle of, a creek arm, or they could be pushed up against a bluff bank. So really be scanning all of the water there in front of you, because you just never know where that bait and where the bass are going to be. Next is the wind direction and the current. We've got to pay attention to this, and it can just really make or break the difference between an okay day and an exceptional day. That wind is going to drive those microorganisms into certain areas. The bait fish are going to follow. The predators are going to follow right behind them. And it's so important. And that wind can especially change from day to day. In this particular section here, on one day, the wind was coming out of the north and just piling the bass up against these tiny little very subtle points. Well, 24 hours later, that wind just was driving hard out of the south, and it pushed the bass all the way to the end of this particular bay. I mean, up into some shallow, skinny water, and there were just shad everywhere, and we started catching fish really quickly because of it. So in a 24-hour period, they had migrated, several hundred yards from the mouth of this bay all the way to the back. So really be focusing on that wind and current. Next question is, do you have that entire water column ready to be covered? Oftentimes when they get on this bait fish bite, we can catch them shallow, right? In super skinny water. We like to focus on that top 1 to 2 feet. That's what I was doing most of the time on this most recent trip. But then, depending if that wind slows down, or the dam operators change things, lock operators change things, and the current slows down, then we may need to work a little bit deeper in the water column. So up in the top, I like super small square bills, spinner baits, those types of things. To get a little bit deeper, maybe I put a bigger profile square bill on, bring the spinner bait a little bit slower. But this is where things like your swim baits and your underspins can really shine. And then also have some bottom bouncing baits ready to go as well. You may need to make those adjustments quickly on the fly. And if that super shallow bite stops or drops off, well, then go ahead and change the part of the water column. So make sure you've got the water column covered before you go out on these fall days. The magic can happen in the fall at any moment in time. It can be nothing, 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 and an absolute gold mine of bass bonanza. So we've got to put ourselves in the best position to be successful. And you could go from just a day to one of the best days that you have ever had on the water. And hey, if you would like to watch a video that talks about, the most critical factor for jerkbait success with a hard suspending jerkbait, which can work great in the fall, go ahead and check this one out right here. And make sure that you go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.